Very quickly, what we saw, the basic issue that we've been dealing with is that there's two levels of Jewish consciousness, I guess you can call it. There's Jewish consciousness of Klal Yisrael consciousness, where we see ourselves and each other as one big organism, one big entity, and that's the truth. There's a certain koyach that Klal Yisrael has, and that was the forefront. That was the consciousness of Bisman Beis Hamikdash Hayakayim. And that will be the consciousness when Mashiach comes. And then you have the consciousness of Galus, which is Bechin's Prat. That every Yid is his own little bubble with his own limited koiches, limited potential, limited vision, Prat. But what we've been seeing the past few weeks is that that's not really true. It's not the Pshat. In other words, it seems that there was a concept of Klal Yisrael which comes with unbelievable power and strength, and that Nebuch is no longer here. And all we're left with are just a bunch of pratim, individual people with their limited koiches and their flaws. And we're hoping for Mashiach to come, and then Malchus Yisrael will return. But what we've been seeing, both in halacha and in machshava, and we saw by the Arizal as well, is that that's not true. That's not true. Klal Yisrael still exists. Where is Klal Yisrael? What happened to that Malchus? That Malchus retreated into every single individual Jew. And now every single individual Jew in Golis, we might not be living outwardly with that sense of Malchus Yisrael, with that sense of Klal Yisrael, but that power of Klal Yisrael is actually within every single Yid. And then we've given examples of this, of how there's because of this, there's a certain strength that every individual Jew has, dafka in Golis, more so than we would have had during the times of the Beis Hamikdash. We'll see about this Beis Hashem in coming weeks also, maybe. The whole idea of the ability for every Yid to be able to sort of just survive against the onslaught of the world that comes because within you have koiches that are beyond just you. So that was the basic idea we've been talking about. Last week we saw in particular that in the language of the Arizal, the way the Arizal describes this is that we have two sides to who we are. There's Rachel, and that's Klal Yisrael. That's Klal Yisrael. And then you have Leah. Leah is the hidden place of the self. And what we saw from the Arizal is that there's an inyan, is that when Leah goes into ruin, when Leah falls apart, when that Malchus of Klal Yisrael on the outside is no longer in existence, that it's the ruins of Rachel actually become the building blocks of Leah. That's what we saw in the Arizal. And in our terminology, that's what it means. It means that Klal Yisrael falls apart on the outside, and Malchus Yisrael falls apart, but where did it go? It didn't just disappear. The building blocks of Malchus Yisrael, the external Malchus Yisrael, becomes the building, the material of Malchus Yisrael on the outside becomes the building blocks of Malchus Yisrael within every single Jew. And so, Dafka in Galus, there's a certain strength and tikifus and a depth of every single individual Jew has coming from that collective whole of Klal Yisrael. Now, what we saw as well is that the Rizal said that, based on Kavanas and so on, is that there's one time in the day that's specifically shaykh to this avodah of recognizing how Malchus Yisrael did not go away, but it sort of retreats within the self. And there's a certain part of the day to sort of be mechazik that and to connect to it, and that's by Tikun Chatzos. That's what we talk about. Tikun Chatzos says Tikun Rachel, Tikun Leah. Tehillim talking about Tikun Rachel means we have Tehillim that you say by Tikun Chatzos, which talks about sad Tehillim, like Eicha and so on, that talks about the destruction of Malchus Yisrael. But then you also have Tikun Leah, psukim of Shira, of Haidah, of Dvekas, talking about that Malchus Yisrael did not really go in one way on the outside, but it still exists, and it's even stronger on the inside. That's basically what we saw. So today, just for a little bit, I want to bring this down like halach l'maisa. So halach l'maisa. So really, last week was also shtig halach l'maisa because it means we should do Tikun Chatzos. So fine, but a little bit more halach l'maisa. So this is what Chassidus always does, right? So Chassidus always comes and takes a concept that's a theoretical idea, I guess you could say, in the Kisyari, or something that's only practical for Kavanis and Mechavnim, and Chassidus brings it to every single Yid. So let's see inside what we're gonna how Chassidus not redefines Tikun Chatzos, because it doesn't take away from the chashivas of actually doing it at midnight, but makes it an avodah that encompasses every moment of the day, because that's also a big aside. In Pnimis HaTorah, the Rashash has a lashon. It's good to hear the words. The Rashash said that there's a concept that's called hiskalus and hiskashus. I mentioned this Shabbos afternoon. Hiskalus and hiskashus means inter-inclusion. It means that every single aspect of Yiddishkeit is connected with every other aspect of Yiddishkeit. In other words, instead of thinking about Shachris as a certain time frame, which it is in halacha, and then Shachris is finished. In Chitzonius, it's certainly like that. Like Shachris is a limited time. It doesn't, it's not the entire day. But on some level, what Shachris means in the Nefesh is true in the middle of the afternoon as well. This is again a little bit of a window into the sugya of how some tzaddikim don't take zmani tefillah or things like that so seriously. There's many aspects of one aspect is that if you're holding in that place of Shachris within the Nefesh, so what it says in the clock. So nafkim it says in the clock. The inyan of Shachris is shaykh whenever. So if they're makash themselves, that inyan of Shachris, it's throughout the day. So Tikun Chatzos is the same thing. It's a certain, there's a window of doing Tikun Chatzos, but what Tikun Chatzos means in the Nefesh, in terms of this inyan of discovering Malchus Yisrael within the self, and allowing it to sort of emerge a little bit, and to slowly but surely come out of hiding and return to the outside and unify Rachel and Leah, right? So that's something that's really throughout the whole day. And this is an example we're going to see. But just to sort of get us back into that place, if you take a look at, we'll go a little bit backwards. If you take a look at the last Maramakim on the page, this is a few lines from Rav Kook in Ar Satchia. I've been saying also that everything we're learning about in this series is really a hachan, it's a mafteach to all the writings of Rav Kook. Everything Rav Kook talked about was about this inyan, that Malchus Yisrael has not gone, it's in the self, and it's slow, and he saw at his time, in those late 18, early 1900s, he called it the time of the Tchiyah, where Malchus Yisrael was finally coming out of the individual and returning to the world scene. That's how he defined his time period. So this is what he writes. Again, then we'll go back. We'll focus in on our particular inyan of Tikun Chatzos. So he says, Hagolus. It's an amazing line of here. Hagolus miata es tzivyaneinu. What Golus did, said Rav Kook, it didn't destroy the Jewish people. It shrank our stature. It just shrank our stature. Dachai sanu. It sort of crushed us. It put us in a small size. Avaloi yishmida, I feel garger echad nikol skulasenu. Golus never destroyed and obliterated even one little kernel of our greatness. Golus can't do that. Kol mashu muchan lanu, everything that we're waiting for with Gula, with Mashiach, harionim sitan, is already found within us. Nothing was taken away. Kol mashet tzarech li is gadol upereach, everything that we expect to be great and flourishing and flowering like a tree, who katan kamatz v'kavish, is just right now small and kamish is like pickled. It's sort of it's just being pickled. It's not flourishing right now, but it's all small. Avol hakol, but in truth, at the right time, because of that, it's not. Therefore, like I mentioned Shabbos morning, Mashiach is not a chiddush. It's nothing new. It's nothing new. Whatever Mashiach brings to us is already found within us. But what? Avol hakol yiskadol. It'll magnify once again. Hakol yashav perach. Everything will return to flowering. Yatzis uperach Yisrael, the pasuk says. So that's the aside. So again, Malchus Yisrael did not go away. It's within the self. So what does that mean? In Avodah. So a practical Avodah. So take a look at Maramakim number 1. So this is a famous piece in the Noam Melech in Parshas Kedarim. Okay, the Noam Melech over here is the purpose of this piece for us is that he's going to define for us what is that inyan of Klal Yisrael. What's a certain aspect of that inyan that's called Klal Yisrael. So Noam Melech asks it's a little bit of a depressing question. So he says like this: Question Noam Melech asks is how is it possible for a yid to do any of that? How could we ever do a mitzvah? How can we ever do a mitzvah? A person puts on tefillin, so you're putting on tefillin with your hands, right? You're putting on tefillin using your hands. But let's say those hands, God forbid, once upon a time didn't have error. And let's say the person didn't do tshuva yet. So it means the hands are damaged. So how could the same hands that have been damaged with sin be now a vessel and a vehicle to perform a mitzvah and to bring kedusha into the world? How's it possible? So l'chayra, again, if we're going to do a mitzvah, it needs our guf and and the limbs that we're using to be purified. So how do we do it? What's the trick? Ach shatikun lazeh. So said the Rebbe Melech, the tikun for this is as follows: the meshakol atzmai im klolos Yisrael. Said Rebbe Melech, the eitzah is when you do a mitzvah, not to think of yourself as just an individual person, but to be makashi yourself to that reality that's called Klal Yisrael. Why? Ki yesh olam hanikra Kol Yisrael. There's a world, there's a world that's called Kol Yisrael. V'olam ahu, and here's the point for us. And what is the defining factor of that inyan that's called Klal Yisrael? Which again, as I said, during the times of the Beis Hamikdash was out in the forefront, but nowadays is within the self. Ha'olam ahu shalem b'li shum pagam. That universe that's called Klal Yisrael is absolutely perfect. The truth is, it's connected to this past parasha. When Bilam has a prophecy, what does Hashem say through Bilam? So Hashem says, Lo hibit oven b'Yaakov, lo yiro amul b'Yisrael. Hashem doesn't see any sin by Klal Yisrael, and He doesn't see any iniquity by the Jewish people. Really, well, doesn't see any averos. We just said slichus. That doesn't mean He doesn't see any averos. The answer is, yeah, by the individual there's pagam and there's damages. Klal Yisrael, lo hibit oven b'Yaakov. The Klal Yisrael is a mitzias like Rachel Imenu. You fast Torah, you fast Mar. Absolutely stunning and beautiful without any flaws. That's Klal Yisrael. So said the Noam Elimelech, V'olam hu shalom b'li shum pagam, ki klolos Yisrael hin tzadikim. V'imkein, af haprotim hachaytim l'pa'amim. So therefore, even you have individuals that have sinned, that have difficulties. Av ha'klolos hein tamid kayam v'kedushasam. But the Klal is always strong and always firm in their kedusha. V'adam akash ratzmei b'klolos achim. So said the Melech, if you, before you do a mitzvah, connect yourself to Klal Yisrael, you define, listen, I'm just a member of the Jewish people, and I'm performing this mitzvah as a member of the Jewish people, as I say, Ever Niksha B'Klalos. Then your arm is not just an arm of you, it's not your arm, which is damaged, it's an arm of Klal Yisrael. It's an arm of Klal Yisrael, V'niskam B'Kedushal Yoina, and now it's able to be masakin, to bring Kedusha into the world, because it transcended its individual pagam. That's what Nimach goes on to say. That's the lashon that we say by in what you call it before you do a mitzvah l'shem yichud. So the lashon is l'shem yichud and so on. I'm doing this b'shem Kol Yisrael, on behalf of Klal Yisrael, on behalf of Klal Yisrael. Yeah, so that's the nekuda. By saying those words b'shem Kol Yisrael, you're being makashi yourself to that madrega that's called Klal Yisrael, which is absolutely perfect. And Mimela, you're able to perform the mitzvah. Okay, so it's a beautiful word by itself. For our purposes, what we see from the Nimach is what? Is that inyan that's called Malchus Yisrael and Klal Yisrael is perfect. It's perfect. It's holy. It's perfect. It's without any chesronos. That's the Yisrael. Now, again, go back. What have we been saying until now? So where did Malchus Yisrael? Where does Klal Yisrael go? So Klal Yisrael didn't disappear. Klal Yisrael retreats into every single individual person, and from here emerges the great avodah that we find specifically in Breslov, which is to find an akuda taiva within yourself, to find a point within yourself that's also perfect. So it's a famous part, we're going to see this from Rabbi Nachman and Rav Nassan as well. As we know, Rabbi Nachman talked about this in Resh Pei Beis, in Azamra, and Lakuta Meran. There's a big inyan of what? Of finding an akuda taiva, of looking at your life and saying, this is messed up and this is messed up, but to look hard enough to find something that's perfect. And if you don't find it initially, you have to look harder. Because Rav Nachman says it's impossible, Rav Nachman, we'll see in a second, it's impossible that there should be a Jew that doesn't have a nakuda of perfection within the self. And Rav Nachman said, and if you find that nakuda of perfection within yourself, from there you'll be able to rebuild your whole life. And from there you'll be able to become an elevated and a real tzaddik on the outside. So you read that and it's like, oh, it's so beautiful. It's very, very nice. So chizik, you could, beautiful things. But what's the oimik of it? So the oimik of it is that if Klal Yisrael is perfect, so where did Klal Yisrael go in Galus? Klal Yisrael went within the individual self, which means that that there must be, by its very definition, a nakuda of perfection within every single Jew. And when you look for that nakuda of perfection within yourself, of something that you can say, you know what, I'm pretty good at that, and this is something that I have a mile over other people, and that's good. And there's a certain nakuda that I'm showing in. When you find that nakuda, that's not just a chizik. That's finding Malchus Yisrael within you. That's called connecting to Klal Yisrael within the self. And when you use that nakuda to then, change your life, and like Rav Nachman will see in a second, to use that and to judge yourself favorably by that, and to orient your entire, way of thinking of yourself from that nakuda, instead of saying I'm a bad guy with some good qualities. He said, no, I'm a good guy with some bad qualities, right? And slowly but surely that goodness of that Nikuda Taiva should emerge and sort of take over your whole life. In Pneumius, what's happening with that is that what? Is that you've discovered Leah within the self. You found the Malchus Yisrael within yourself that's called the Nekuda Taiva, and you're not just letting it sit there and isolated in a closet. You're Adrabah, you're using it to redefine your whole life. You're bringing it out into the forefront, and you're rebuilding the Malchus Yisrael from the inside all the way to the outside. And so the avoid of Tikun Chatzos is this inyan of finding a Nekuda Taiva. And in fact, we're going to see in a second, that's exactly what Rav Nosson Breslev writes. We know there's a sefer called Likutei Halachos, right? So Rav Nosson wrote a whole pirush on Shulchan Aruch from beginning to end, based on the Torahs of Rabbi Nachman. So when it comes to halachas of Tikun Chatzos, so Rav Nosson Breslev uses this inyan of finding the Nekuda Taiva to talk about Tikun Chatzos. We'll see it together. Where is this coming from? So again, in Rav Nosson and Rav Nachman, you're not going to find these lashonos of the Arizal and Rachel and Leah and this inyan. They're definitely not going to cook. These inyanim of Malchus Yisrael going back on the inside with the Rambam and Chas Chinuch, all the stuff that we went through. But that's the background to understand, to appreciate this Torah of the Nekuda Taiva, the Zamra, of Rav Nachman is talking about. So you follow that? That's the insight. So let's see it together inside. So really, Marmukah number 2 and 3 is basically snippets from Likutei Halachos in the beginning of Likutei Halachos by Tikun Chatzos. So we'll see it together. So again, Marmukah number 2. So first, in the beginning, the way Likutei Halachos works is that first Rav Nosson sort of quotes, not verbatim necessarily, but sort of like sums up the piece in Likutei Halachos in Likutei Moran that he's building off of, and then he goes on. So this is sort of like the summed up version of Reish Pei Beis, of that inyan of Nekuda Taivas that Rav Nosson is building off of. So it's like this: Ki Yisa b'divrei Rabbeinu Zal. We see by Rabbi Nachman in Reish Pei Beis, Shekesh Adam Maschel Lechapesh Atzmai, when a person begins to investigate oneself, V'roya Shu Rochek Moed Hashem Yisbarach, and finds that he's distant from Hashem. So it's interesting, by the Bali Musar with Cheshvan and Nefesh, good. You've got to the truth. You're far from God. That's good. That's good. So Rav Nachman says, okay, it's an honest evaluation of the self sometimes, but that's not the end. That's only the beginning of the search. And you find yourself, God forbid, filled with sin and damage and so on. And it seems to you that you're far from anything good. Azai, so then what's the avodah? Not just to start doing good. Right? Again, that's what the Bali Musar would say, is that, okay, fine, so now you're far from God, so start coming close to God. Rav Nachman says, no. That's not the way. You can't. If you're far from God, you can't even begin to come close to God. What you have to do is find a part of yourself that is not far from God, and build from that nekuda. But again, instead of it just being a psychological trick, in Pnimius, what you're doing is you're finding Malchus Yisrael within yourself. You're finding Gula. You're finding Mashiach within yourself. You're finding that Bizman Shebeis Hamikdash Hayakayim within the self, and from there you're going to be able to rebuild the Yerushalayim of your life. That you have to find something good within yourself. You can't stop the Cheshvan and Nefesh where everything is terrible. It's not possible you didn't do anything good in your life. And Rav Nachman goes on. So then you're mamish a good Jew, and even the mitzvah that you found yourself doing, you then investigate it further, and you realize that it itself was also damaged. It wasn't l'shem shemayim, or it wasn't perfect, whatever it is. Kimur v'psailos harbi, it was mixed with all sorts of negative things. There's got to be some nekuda taiva within that. So it's also, if you think about it, why does it have to be? What does it have to be? Rav Nachman said, no, it has to be that every single Jew will find some nekuda taiva within themselves. He's not a Navi, he's going to tell every single Jew for sure has some. Maybe there's a year that everything is messed up. The answer is again, no. Because even if, what does it mean a Jew that's messed up in their religious life? It means Rachel is in ruins. But again, if Rachel is in ruins, it doesn't go away. Rachel just retreats into the self and is now called Leah. And so there's no such thing as that Malchus Yisrael, which the Navi Melech told us is perfect and showing. It doesn't go away. It retreats into the self. So you have to look. But at some point, when you look hard enough within the self, you will find that world that's called Klal Yisrael. And that world of Klal Yisrael is utterly perfect. So it means that you have to, so by its very definition, if you're a Jew, it means that you have some part of you that's showing, that's a Nekuda Taiva, and that's your responsibility of Tikun Chatzos, is to find that Nekuda Taiva and to celebrate it. And recognizing that I'm not maybe living up to that, that standard within myself, and so therefore I'm mourning Rachel, but I'm also celebrating Leah, and that's what Tikun Chatzos is. So he says, and by doing this, by number one, finding the Nekuda Taiva, and number two, judging yourself from that vantage point, and defining yourself from that Nekuda Taiva. In other words, therefore, in a certain sense, returning to a Mashiach consciousness, where you're defining yourself from a Klal Yisrael vantage point, right? That's what it is. Because again, the individual is broken, Klal Yisrael is perfect. By finding the part of you that's perfect, and judging and defining yourself from that means that you're defining yourself as part of Klal Yisrael. So what you're doing in your life is what? Is mamish, returning to Bizman Shebeis HaMikdash HaYekayim. You're bringing Gula to your life by looking at yourself not as an individual. Again, individual means broken. Klal Yisrael means perfect. And by judging yourself from that Nekuda Taiva, that part of perfection within the self, that means that you're judging yourself and you're defining yourself based on Klal Yisrael. You're mamish, bringing Gula into your life. That's what Mashiach is. So he says, by finding these good points, again, doesn't take away from the reality, from the outside, from the Rachel. But you're taka moving from that place of individual, which is broken, to that place of Klal Yisrael, which is perfect. That's mamish happening. It's a mistake. And through this, you could taka be zayich to do tshuva. Because what is tshuva? Tshuva means this inyan of allowing Leah to emerge and to reunify with Rachel, and that's what Mashiach is. Like we mentioned last week, that the Navi says that when Mashiach comes, Rachel and Leah will become mamish one, and that's what that means. It means so we can do that within ourselves. The way to do that within ourselves is to find a Nekuda Taiva that we're all proud of, that we can say, you know what, I'm pretty good about that. And this inyan that I'm proud of myself, that's my Klal Yisrael point, and judge myself accordingly. And that by doing so, that means I'm defining myself as a member of Klal Yisrael. And that's Gula. That's mamish Gula. Fine, that's the idea from Rabbi Nachman. Now comes Rav Nassim, just very quickly. Rav Nassim comes and explains how this is the inyan of Tikun Chatzos. And that's not what we're talking about. Marmukah number 3, again, in Likutei Halachos, right over there in the beginning of Likutei Halachos. By the way, Likutei Halachos is a fantastic sefer. It's like 10 volumes, whatever it is. It's a lot of, but it's not nice. I shouldn't say it, but sometimes when you have an author, you want to hook the reader. You know what I'm saying? Like the first chapter or whatever, you want to get the guy. So Reb Nassim has an amazing hook. That first piece in Likutei Halachos, which is this piece based on the Nekuda Taiva, the whole Torah that we're talking about is from that first piece of Likutei Halachos. You start learning that first Torah, you're gonna keep on going. You know what I'm saying? So it was it worked out well. So he says like this: Marmukah number 3, V'zeh b'chinas kimas chatzos. And this is the inyan of waking up at midnight. If you remember, I mentioned, what was it last week, that Breslov is very stark with Tikun Chatzos. And Rav Nachman also says, you have all these disjointed pieces. Rav Nachman said Tikun Chatzos is mamish the biggest thing in the world. Right? And Rav Nachman said in that piece of the Zamra of the finding the Nekuda Taiva that this is the inyan you have to work, you have to go with your whole life. This is the side of everything I said. You have to find that Nekuda Taiva. So he's pushing Tikun Chatzos and he's pushing finding the Nekuda Taiva. The answer is, it's one of the same. It's the same inyan. How's it the same? So he says like this: this inyan of getting up at midnight. What's midnight? Midnight is the darkest time of the night, right? Darkest time of the night, which means nighttime means mamish galus. Nighttime means rachels and ruin. But you wake up in the middle of the night and you get out of bed and you break that slumber, right? By finding within you a nakuda of gula, by finding within you a non-galus moment, a non-galus aspect. Like the pasuk says, David Melch says that let the harp and all my instruments let it awake. The songs of David Melch woke him up at midnight. Right? So this famous Gemara in Brachos. How did David Melch know when midnight is? Because the Gemara is the whole thing, right? That even Moshe Rabbeinu didn't really know when midnight is 100%, right? Because Moshe says by Yitzizan Kachat but David Melch knew when Tikun Chatzos was. How did David Melch know? So the Gemara says because he had a harp hanging in front of his bed, on top of his bed. And every midnight, exactly, a ruach tzefinus, a wind from the north would come in, from the window, and play the harp, and that's how he woke up. So the whole thing's a pella. Moshe couldn't think of that, but the whole thing's a pella. There's such an inyan that Moshe wasn't oimid on the side of Tikun Chatzos, only David Melch is oimid on that side. Because that's what it is sometimes. When you have a Yid, Moshe Rabbeinu was Bezman Shabbos HaMikdash HaYekayim. You know what I'm saying? Moshe Rabbeinu is in Geula. What's Tikun Chatzos? Tikun Chatzos is finding Geula in Golas, right? Tikun Chatzos means finding Klal Yisrael within the prat of the individual self. Finding the Nekuda Tova. In the middle of the night, to be able to wake up. And to be able to have that Geula consciousness when everything around you is dark. That's not a Moshe Rabbeinu Indian. That's a David HaMelech. So he says again, the Zebechinas Kiner Shel David Shay Menagin. This is the Indian of the harp of David that was Menagin, right? It played music. Aydei Ruach Tzafin through the northern wind. Bechinas Ruach Toiva. The northern wind, the word Tzafin, he's going to say in a second, the word Tzafin comes from Tzafin, like in Pesach night, right? Tzafin means hidden. The Ruach Tzafin means, Ruach doesn't just mean a wind. Ruach means your spirit, yourself, your Ruach. I mean, that's V'ruach Nachin Chadish B'kirbi, right? Like, Ruach means your sense of self, your identity. Ruach Tzafay means your hidden identity, that Nekuda Taiva that you have to look for. That's what played the harp of David, and that's what made him have the strength to arise at midnight. Nekuda Taiva Hatzafin V'Tomer, that Nekuda Taiva within the self, within the personality, that's hidden and very, very hidden. I feel B'Tachlis Hashena, and by finding that Nekuda, even in the depths of slumber, you'll be able to wake up. That's David HaMelech Tikun. So he says, and that's exactly what Yitzias Mitzrayim was also, right? Because Yitzias Mitzrayim also took place at midnight. Maybe Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't identify exactly what midnight is, but it took place at midnight, right? Seder night, right? We have a whole song talking about the different things that happened at midnight. There's something going on. Geula, there's something at midnight. Why? Because, listen to this amazing thing. Not only do we have to do Tikun Chatzos, but the Rebbeinu Shem also does Tikun Chatzos. What do I mean? Ki Yisrael ha'yu melech lachem. Klal Yisrael and Mitzrayim were all filthy, right? On all levels. Ki ha'yu b'chinas mem teh shari tumah. Ki do, right? 49 levels of impurity, bottom. V'Hashem yisbarach rachem alei. But Hashem rachmanas on us. U'matzah behem nekudas taivas. And we couldn't do it ourselves, but the Rebbeinu Shem found for us nekudas taivas. I feel b'toikif tumas Mitzrayim, even in the depths of tumas Mitzrayim, she's gaber alein, which overcame us on all levels. But Hashem found nekudas. Hashem did Tikun Chatzos. What did Hashem find? Chazal say 4 things we were able to keep, and because of that we got out of Galus, right? We didn't change our language, we didn't change our names, we didn't change our clothing, right? These are the things. And then we had the Karban Pesach and Dam Mila. Those things are not chashuv enough. I mean, I shouldn't say, they're not chashuv enough to get us out of Galus. So how did it work? The answer is in the Nekudas Taivas. That's what it was. Those things, not changing your name, that you're still called Yankel, but Yankel serving by the Zar. Right? So all the Averis that we were falling to, and all the Memta Shari Tumas on one side of the scale, and the fact that we're still calling ourselves Yankel and Moshe on the other side, it does not outweigh all the Averis. So what's going on over there? The answer is, that's Avodah Tikun Chatzos, finding a Nekuda Taiva, which is that Nekuda of Klal Yisrael, which is Shalom and perfect, and defining the person based on that. That's called Tikun Chatzos, and the Rebbeinu Shalom was doing Tikun Chatzos. And therefore, that's why Yitzias Mitzrayim, we all start to talk about this, that Pesach was a Geula that the Rebbeinu Shalom did. It was not really, we didn't really earn it. It was all Miserusa de Le'ela, right? It was all the Rebbeinu Shalom just bringing us a Geula. And because of that, it wasn't forever. We go back into Galus. But the ultimate Geula is going to have to be a Geula that we generate ourselves. So we think of that as like, so we have to do mitzvahs, we have to do tshuva, which is, that's all true. But if we think about it, if Gulas Mitzrayim came from this aspect, this avoid of Tikun Chatzos, the only issue was there was Hashem doing it. What we need to do to get out of our Gulas is the same thing Hashem did by Mitzrayim, but to do it ourselves. There's this inyan of Tikun Chatzos, to literally do Tikun Chatzos, but again, in Pnimius, to find those Nekudas Taivas within ourselves and within other Yidden. Sometimes it's some people it's harder to find the Nekudas Taivas in themselves. And some people, by some Yidden, it's harder for them to find a Nekudas Taivas in other people. You have to know yourself, Some people, by one person, their Ikra Avodah is to do Tikun Chatzos to themselves, and by some people, their Ikra Avodah is to do Tikun Chatzos to other people. So you have to know what your Avodah is. But ultimately, to get out of Golus, you have to do Tikun, you have to do this Avodah of finding Nekudas Taivas. We have to do it, not just rely on Hashem to do it, and then there will be a Gula Shlema. So he goes on just to finish the next paragraph. And that's the ending of Gula taking place at Chatzos. That's the moment of when the avodah is to be ma'or and to awaken that Nakuda Taiva, B'chinas Ruach Tzafon, again, just like David, like that northern or that hidden spirit within the self that comes and starts and is able to play music. It's able to be besimcha over yourself, and from there you'll be able to arise and to break through the darkness. Haminashe V'kina David, that plays the harp of David. Valkain Harish, now it's an amazing thing. Valkain Harishan Shagila Soid Chatzos. So where's the first place in Tanakh that we find this inyan of midnight? So it says Rav Nassan, the first one to reveal the secret of Chatzos, Avram Avinu. Was Avram Avinu, Be'esha Nilcham Im HaMalachim, when he was fighting against the 4 kings, right? Because the 4 kings fought against the 5 kings, right? And then light was captured by the 4 kings, and Avram Avinu comes and conquers the 4 kings and saves light. So it says in Chazal, Lahatzalas light, he goes to save light, K'masher Kasav, and it says in Pasuk, the Chalik Aleim Halayla, that Avram Avinu runs after the 4 kings and conquers them at the middle of the night. In other words, like the night being cut into 2 pieces, mamish by chatzos. So what we see is that that Avram Avinu is ma'orer. There's an awakening of the avodah of Tikun Chatzos, dafka by Avram Avinu when he's saving light. What does light have to do with Tikun Chatzos? What's going on over here? So he says an amazing thing. Ki Avram radav achrei malachim. Because let's think about this for a second. Avram Avinu is running after the kings, right? He's fighting a war. Lahatzil's light, to save light. Why? Light's a bad guy. Light's a nice varf. Light left Avram Avinu. Chazal say that light said, "Ainli chayfetz loy ba'Avram loy be'elakav." Light went to Sodom. Why? Because I'm not interested in Avram. I'm not interested in Avram's God. So light is a bad guy. He's no good. So why is Avram Avinu sacrificing, putting his life in danger? And his life means the life of everything. He's putting everything in danger to save light. Why? Because Avram Avinu, light's it's all messed up, but there's a nekudas toivus within him. And now is Avram Avinu's in, finding nekudas toivus. Think about it, even with Sodom, right? What does Avram Avinu say? There's 50 tzaddikim, 40 tzaddikim, 45, he goes through the whole thing, to nekudas toivus. So why doesn't Hashem say, listen, there's 50 tzaddikim, fine, I'll save those tzaddikim, the rest of the city is destroyed. No. Because what Avram Avinu was doing at that moment is also the same thing, defining the entire city based on those individual tzaddikim. That's Tikun Chatzos. That's finding the Nekuda Taiva and judging the entirety based on that Nekuda Taiva. This is all about light, and this is about Sodom. You see this in of Avram Avinu of doing Tikun Chatzos and finding the Nekudas Taivas. And he says an amazing thing. Val Kain, Afal Pisha Light Rasha. So even though light was a Rasha, Maser Avram Nafshay, the Shvil Hatzila. Avram Avinu was Maser Nefesh to save him. Kimimenu Yatzaros Shiyasimenu David. Because and why is this all revolving around light? Why is Tikun Chatzos? Why is the first example in all of Tanakh of this inyan of finding a Nekuda Taiva, Dafka at midnight, revolving in light? Because light, what was the Nekuda Taiva in light? The Nekuda Taiva in light is Malchus Beis David, is Mashiach. That's the Nekuda Taiva in light. The whole inyan of Geula is this Nekuda of what? Of the returning Malchus Yisrael to its original place. That it never went away. It was just within itself. Everything we're talking about, Malchus Yisrael in Golas, and therefore its eventual return to the forefront, and David and Melech's ability to wake up at midnight with this kina, the whole it's mamish, it all starts with light. And Avram Avinu saw this in light, and because of that, to save light, he evokes this avodah of Nekudas Taivas. So he says, Mashiach shu ikr v'sharsha Nekuda Taiva. Valkin ikr kavanas ha'malachim ma'il haragas light. And that's why all the 4 and 5 kings, so they went to war, it was with the intention of killing light. Ki kol kavanas is amazing. Like ki kol kavanas asitra achra, he les gabra al b'chinas nekuda taiva chas v'sham. The whole in of the sitra achra is to stop us from doing this avodah of finding the nekuda taivas. Because the sitra achra knows you find that nekuda taiva, you'll save light, you bring Mashiach, and finished. There's a whole inyan is to fight against this inyan of not to find Malchus Yisrael within the self, not to find Klal Yisrael within the self, not to find Leah, just to see Rachel in ruin and to be Messiahish. Hashem lo yazvenu b'yada. But Hashem doesn't allow the Sitra Achra to win. The Nasan Kaich leV'chinas Avram, V'chinas Chesed, and Hashem Yisparach gives strength to Avram with Chesed, that positive mindset. Lahatzilas light, to save light. Ayidei HaNekuda Taiva Sheish by focusing on the Nekudas Taivas, by finding the Nekuda of David HaMelech and finding the point of Geula. Ki Ikar HaGeula B'chlal U'Bepratius Gulas HaNefesh, because the whole inyan of Geula B'chlal U'Befrat. Shall kol echad v'echad totally the idea of hasaga zayis depends on this inyan l'chavin heitiv nekudas chatzos laila to chap what chatzos is about. And it doesn't just mean to wake up at midnight, but again, this inyan of Tikun Chatzos and finding nekudas taifas, it's mamish what Gula is about. That's mamish what Gula is. So this is what it boils down to. So that the past 4 weeks, whatever, is all the shim we've been talking about, this inyan, it boils down to this avodah, which is to be positive. To be positive for the self, to be positive for other people. Find that nekuda taiva that you have within yourself or that you have within another Jew. Again, Avraham Avinu could have had all the reasons in the world not to like light, but Avraham Avinu worked on himself. Don't think it just came natural to Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu had to, there was an avodah. Avraham Avinu had an avodah to find that nekuda taiva in light, and once he found it, then that's all I'm going to see. That's all I'm going to focus on, and my entire orientation to light is just going to be coming from that place, that nekuda taiva. That was his avodah. And it is an avodah. Again, like I said, sometimes it's harder to do that for yourself. Sometimes it's harder to do it for other people. But either way, that's the avodah Tikun Chatzos. And you do that, that itself is gula. That itself is gula. That's again, that's taking Klal Yisrael. It's finding Klal Yisrael. It's finding Malchus Yisrael. It's finding Mashiach. And that's finding the nekuda taiva. And then judging yourself accordingly and reorienting your whole life based on that nekuda taiva means, I found Mashiach, I'm now going to escort him out of Galus. I found Klal Yisrael, we're going to take it out of Galus, we're going to return the Malchus to its rightful place in Yerushalayim Yer HaKadosh. No? Should be to be able to see that in our lives, into our days, and to do that avodah within the self.